Welcome to Larry the Alchemist, and on today's episode, 5 bands who, in my opinion, are running on past controversies, past bad boy images, who aren't putting out anything relevant, that the only reason why anybody talks about them or cares about them is because of outrageous or nutty things that they've done in their past. They're basically living off their reputations. What got me thinking about this and this video will probably be up by the time I put this video up, I interviewed Tim Derling about his new book, Red on Black, which is about Sammy Hagar. And when we were off camera, we were talking about why isn't Sammy more popular? He's an amazing singer. He was in arguably the biggest hard rock band of all time, Van Halen, but he's one of these guys that everybody knows him, but they kind of don't know him. We used the example of, if I showed a picture of Alice Cooper to my parents, they'd probably recognize Alice Cooper. They probably have no idea who Sammy Hagar is. And my conclusion is that Sammy's just a nice guy. He's never had any controversies. He's never almost died from an overdose. He never crashed his car because he was blitzed out of his mind. He never dated any porn stars. He never got in a fight with Axl Rose at an award ceremony. I mean, he's just a nice guy that puts out rock records. And if you saw the video with Tim, like we talked about how he's got like freaking 19 or something solo albums, and it's like he has all this stuff, all these albums out and everything, and yet people kind of know him but don't know him. It's sort of this strange thing. And so it made me think about bands that are really just running off of their we're crazy, bad boy reputations and stories about them being lunatics and stuff like that. So I came up with 5 of them. Number one for me, and these are in no particular order. Number one is Motley Crue. In my opinion, Motley Crue has not put out a good record. In fact, their whole catalog is very inconsistent. I could go back and say they haven't put out a good record since Shout at the Devil. Girls, Girls, Girls was really successful, and what's the other album? I forget what the name of the other. Dr. Feelgood, that was a huge successful record for them. But their catalog is very inconsistent. Basically, since Dr. Feelgood, they've tried to reunite Generation Swine and everything. Vince Neil coming back. I love the John Corabi record. I made a video on that. Some people disagreed with me on that. I think that that's a great record. But really, since then, they've just been all over the place. They've just been living on past glories. They live on the outrage. Nikki Sixx, Heroin Diaries, Behind the Music. He has to have his heart restarted and all this kind of stuff. Tommy Lee, he's an outrageous guy, dating Pamela Anderson, tapes, videotapes, and all this other stuff. They're just basically living off of controversy. The tours that they do, their new music is just never registers, in my opinion. It's never any good. It's just they're living off their past glory and about them being outrageous. All right, number 2, Ted Nugent. Martin Popoff would probably disagree with me on this. I know he likes a lot of the 80s Ted Nugent. In my opinion, after the 70s, Ted hasn't put anything out. The only reason he's in the news is because he says outrageous things. It's never about music. Every time I see a headline about Ted Nugent, it never has anything to do with the music. It just has something to do with some crazy thing that he's saying. And in the 70s, it was fun. He had that image, the loincloth, the shooting the bow on stage, swinging from a vine, this sort of crazy hard rock Tarzan guy. But after that, where's the music? Again, I haven't listened to all of his 80s stuff. There's probably something in there somewhere, but it basically, I have no interest in anything that he's put out really since the 70s. Okay, here's another one. I don't really know a lot about this guy, but it just seems like it's just all about past controversies, past outrages. He's sort of the poster child for he's outrageous, scaring the parents in the 90s, and that's Marilyn Manson. Does this guy still put out music? I don't know. I have no idea. Anytime I see him in a video or somebody's talking about him, it's about stuff from the past. It just seems like, he scared parents in the 90s. Now he's just not. He's not scary anymore. It's nothing. It's, I don't know. Does this guy even still put out music? I don't know. All right, next one. I hate to say this because I love him. Huge fan. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy reached his point, especially around the Ozfest era, and you can hear me and Darren talk about this on Sabbath Sundays or on our Into the Void of Black Sabbath podcast. Ozzy sort of becomes a caricature. He becomes a character. I'm crazy, the bats, the Prince of Evil, and everything like that. And he starts just sort of running on this reputation of like how he was in the 80s. And the music isn't particularly good. The music takes a downturn, although I really liked his last studio album, Patient Number 9. It does seem like with Ordinary Man, he's sort of reached this more mature, slightly more mature level, like this guy looking back on his career type of thing. But there was a period in the 90s where it was just like, it was all about the bats and the dove and the all this kind of stuff. And it was just, he was just running on this. And unfortunately, although I think he's turned this around, so maybe it's a little unfair for me to put him on this list because I think he has sort of turned this around with Ordinary Man and Patient Number 9. We'll say that we'll give him a break here in the last 10 years, but really through the 90s, it was all about the 90s, early 2000s. It was all sort of this Ozfest, Ozzy, I'm crazy, let me hear you scream, throwing buckets of water, like this, running on that kind of outrage. All right, the last one for me is Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, one of the biggest selling hard rock albums of all time. Maybe if you asked me, one of the biggest burnout factor albums of all time, because some of those songs have just been absolutely pummeled to death on classic rock radio. But then they just seem to exist in this weird Axl Rose. He's crazy. He doesn't show up on time. He gets in fights with Bret Michaels. I don't know. Did he get in a fight? I don't know. He gets in fights with like other glam guys. I think Bret Michaels was one of them. Who cares? Doesn't matter. But again, they're just sort of running on this Appetite for Destruction. I know Use Your Illusion. There were a bunch of hits off of those. But really, it's Appetite for Destruction. And it's how crazy Axl is. And they've like made a career out of this. It's like, where's the music? I could have dubbed the title of this video, Where's the Music? Because for most of these bands, outside of Ozzy, none of these bands, in my opinion, Motley Crue, Ted Nugent, Marilyn Manson, and Guns N' Roses, have put out anything notable in the last 20 years. I'll give Ozzy a break. Maybe I shouldn't have put him on this list. But all right, there you go. What do you think of my picks for bands that are strictly running on outrage at this point? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. To see you again, make sure you stay metal.